Okay, so we're going to get started. I am very, very excited to have the guest that we have tonight, Dr. Paa-Kofi Obeng. Please do not confuse it with Kofi Obeng. That's his brother. He made that very well known when we made that mistake earlier. Okay. But it is such a pleasure to have you here. I'm going to read your bio and then we will get right into the conversation and I'll tell folks how I know you. So, Dr. Paa-Kofi Obeng was born in Tacoma Park, Maryland, but he grew up in Northeast Ohio, especially Euclid, Ohio. He later went on to attend Ohio State University for both his undergraduate and graduate degrees. Dr. Obeng later went on to attend Ohio University College of Osteopathic Medicine. He completed his internal medicine residency at St. Joseph Health Center in Warren, Ohio. Dr. Obeng currently lives in Hampton, Virginia, with his family and works at the Hampton VA Medical Center, where he provides primary care services to military veterans of various backgrounds. Thank you for serving those that have served us. We really appreciate it. And as a public health service officer, I absolutely appreciate your work at the VA.
Appreciate you too. Thank you.
So, how do I know Dr. Obeng? Paa-Kofi and I actually met at GPSF many moons ago. And he was extremely instrumental in helping bring on the opportunities that we have for our young professionals. He was right by my side along with a couple of other physicians in really building up our young professional section. So I am extremely excited to have you. Can't wait to hear about your career journey and all that you have to share with our young professionals and others that are on the line. So I will turn it over to you and please share.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fran. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you inviting me to be a part of the program. As Dr. Fran had mentioned, we met in 2014, I believe, during the GPSF conference, and we all got together and we just all kind of connected. Me, Dr. Fran, Dr. Nee, we all kind of connected, became good friends. And we, like she mentioned, we started the young professionals part of GPSF, and we're working hand in hand to kind of revamp things and create different creatives and stuff like that. So Fran and I go way back, and little known fact, well, I guess it's known to the GPSF community, but actually that's where I met my wife too, was during the conference as well. So she was one of the speakers. I was a speaker as well. Talking about lupus nephritis, and then my wife had a way better presentation than I did. So so that's what got me interested in, as they say, the rest is history. And Fran definitely was instrumental in that, to appreciate her there
so
too.
Love brewed in the GPSF pot.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, as Dr. Fran said, I'm Paa-Kofi Obeng. I'm an internal medicine physician. I was trained at Ohio University for medical school, and I went to St. Joseph's Health Center in Warren, Ohio, which is about 30 to 45 minutes away from Cleveland. So it's in between Cleveland and Pittsburgh. And I did my internal medicine residency there between 2010 and 2013. Graduated from residency in 2013. So I'm actually coming up this year, it makes 10 years since I've been out of residency. Can't believe it. And since then, after that, I moved to Virginia. The reason why is because, as Dr. Friend mentioned in my bio, that I was born in Maryland, and I still have family there. I still have extended family in Maryland. So I wanted to move a little bit closer to them to kind of see them. I have uncles, aunts, cousins that still live in the area. DC could be a little bit pricey, as some people might already know. So I didn't plan on moving to DC. So I moved to Hampton Roads, and I've been here ever since. Initially, I worked at Bon Secours, which is like a private Catholic hospital, for about 5 years. I was thinking I'd spend pretty much my whole career there. That didn't happen. So I left and worked at a facility that did more like men's health, men's wellness, before I eventually made my way to the VA. And I'll be at VA for, it'll be 3 years this coming August. So definitely have enjoyed my time. It's definitely not been an easy journey, I guess, through medical school and residency and as an attending, but God is good. So everything kind of turned out for the best. So I'm here today.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So for our young audience, you said something very critical. You said it was not an easy journey.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that journey that got you to this point, because I think when we're picking medicine, nobody thinks it's easy, but we think it's going to be a straight path. You know, it's all laid out for us, but it doesn't always work out like that, right? So tell us about your journey and some of the challenges that you had to get to where you are today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you asking, Dr. Fran. So I didn't go straight through. So to give you some background, I graduated from Ohio State for undergrad, but I didn't get in right away. So I ended up going to graduate school, got my master's in public health. Emphasis was on health behavior, health promotion. And then even after that, I didn't get in straight through. So I ended up working. I did a fellowship actually with Health Resources and Services Administration for 2 years out in Rockville, Maryland, and then basically got my application a little bit stronger, retook the MCAT and everything like that. And then I was able to get in after I was done with that fellowship. So it took me a couple of years out of undergrad to get into medical school. So definitely for those people who didn't get straight from undergrad, don't worry, because there's always opportunities afterward to get into medical school. I even had people in my old medical school that were, and I'm sure you probably had this too, Dr. Fran, who were like in their 40s, 30s, 40s, who are med ones, first year medical students. So it's not uncommon for people to not get in right away, or maybe they discover medicine later on in life. So that was similar to me. Like I didn't get in right away. So I wasn't necessarily a brand new, young, first year med student, but at the same time, I wasn't, a second career path med student either. So I ended up kind of being in between. And after that, when I got in, it was hard too, actually. When I got into med school, it wasn't easy. I went through some challenges there, academic challenges as well, that kind of extended my time in medical school. But eventually things progressed and got into residency, and even residency was tough too, in terms of trying to get a match and everything like that. So I actually had to go through the process of like scrambling, trying to find something. So that wasn't easy either. Thankfully got into a good program at St. Joseph's, very small community hospital, but very well, you get very good training because it's one of those kind of old school hospitals where you're pretty much the first person at a code, first person at a rapid response. You were it. So even as an intern, you're running codes and doing rapid responses. They let you just they throw you to the wolves, like after maybe I think a month with a senior. And our program was small. Like we had basically, there's really supposed to be 2 people per class. So really 6 internal medicine residents, but our class, there was 3. So we had me and two female residents, and the class above us, the second year, was only 1, and we ended up adding on a second person who was kind of like who transferred. And then the year above that, we only had, we only had 1. So really my intern year, there was only, because of Whippert. So it was 1, 2, there's only 5 of us my intern year.
Wow.
Across all three residency years. So it was something else. But eventually, like after our year, the year behind us, I think we had 2 or 1. So it was a small program, but it was definitely good training. I built my confidence definitely in terms of dealing with like hospital medicine, dealing with procedures. Like you got a lot of experience doing procedures. I love that. That was actually really fun. You got to do, of course, central lines, bread and butter stuff, putting arterial lines and stuff like that. But that really was my passion. Even though I liked hospital medicine, it really was my passion. So I ended up going into outpatient, as Dr. Fran mentioned. I do primary care, so I deal with patients, kind of like 9 to 5 outpatient medicine. So, but yeah.
Very cool. So we have some med students on the line. We have some individuals who have completed med school, maybe did med school in Ghana and are here and trying to navigate the residency system. So you mentioned you went to a small program, and I love some of the things that you mentioned that you gained from being in such a program, the confidence. You were probably the first one they called when there was an opportunity to do procedures.
Yep.
I'm sure you have friends that have gone to bigger programs. So comparing those experiences, what can you share about some more of the benefits of being a small program? And I guess also just to encourage those that may not land into one of those super big programs, because it sounds like you've gained a lot. Though you may not have stayed in the hospital
Yeah,
system, but
yeah.
there was a lot to be gained by being in a smaller program. So can you share a little bit more about that?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much for asking. So basically, you gain a lot of confidence. So essentially, being that you are like the first person on call, you get to learn how to do different procedures. For example, a lot of my colleagues, when I was like an intern, my fellow colleagues who might have been I actually have friends that went to Cleveland Clinic for residency. They hadn't even done any central lines, mostly through their intern year. Within the first couple of months, I had done like, seemed like I did like 50 of them, but it's quite overstatement. But I mean, it's not quite 50, but I did a lot. I did a lot my first couple of months, and a lot of my friends who were at Cleveland Clinic, University Hospital, they hadn't really had that exposure because they have to wait for a second year, third year, to do the procedure before they can do them. So that was awesome. And then I think also leading a team whenever it comes to things like codes and rapid responses, you kind of learn quickly kind of how to run those things too. So that was really good. And then also too, I feel like you're appreciated more maybe at a smaller hospital. I felt like even though we only had, I think, 120 beds, I think, at St. Joe's at the time, which of course is very small, but we still they respected you as a resident, even though you were just an intern or maybe a second year or third year. They still respected you. I think the nursing staff had a whole lot of respect for the residents, and I think also educational staff too, and medical education had a lot of appreciation and respect for the residents. So I think those are definitely things, is the confidence building, kind of like the leadership aspect too, because you really have to, being that you're at a smaller institution, you kind of can come more to the forefront when it comes to certain things. Yeah. So.
Awesome. And how, let me ask this, how have those two things in particular, the confidence, the leadership, how has that helped you in your career path since residency at the VA, doing Men's Health, all of that? How has that really benefited you?
Thank you so much for asking. It's benefited me a lot. It's made me feel more comfortable asking for certain things, whether it be requests for equipment, like at Bon Secours, asking for different things, or questioning admin about certain policies, also being in part of certain groups. When I was at Bon Secours, I was part of like an onboarding group, basically the group of people who would review the CVs of all the doctors that are coming on board and then kind of go through that. And then even now at the VA, I work with, we're doing a heart failure pilot study too, trying to reduce the amount of inpatient admissions, basically having the primary care person kind of be like the go-to in terms of catching the people who have CHF, who might benefit from, up titrating their medications and making sure that they don't end up running to the hospital because their medications are not dosed properly, or maybe they haven't gotten the preventive care that they need. So that's kind of built my confidence in terms of not being afraid to take a leadership role. And even when I was at Men's Wellness, the place I worked at between my two primary care jobs, I was a lab director there. And basically, essentially, I kind of oversaw the labs, made sure that the labs ran efficiently. I also make sure that the I forget, basically that the centrifuges and everything worked properly, that they were calibrated properly. So that kind of built my confidence, that experience at St. Joe's kind of built my confidence to not be afraid to do certain things and to ask for certain things. So.
Yeah, that seems like a complete shift, right? From
Yeah, it is.
what you otherwise would be doing in the hospital,
exactly.
On the floors taking care of patients.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
It is. And to be honest, like, even though I haven't done hospital medicine, I honestly would have to, do some refreshing courses if I did want to go back and be a hospitalist, do some more training. But like, even now, I mean, like, the lessons I learned in terms of assessing patients, maybe in the ICU or people on the floor and the like post-op patients and stuff like that, it still kind of sticks with me. And I still think about those things. And that's something actually I had, when I worked at Bon Secours, my first job out of residency, I had medical students with me too. And I think that my experience at St. Joe's also helped me in terms of teaching medical students that were with me, made me more confident in terms of what I was talking about, in terms of subject matter in terms of physical assessment of patients, because that's important. I think that's a skill that sometimes can be lacking. We get so used to ordering the CT, MRI, plain film X-rays, so forth. But one thing I learned from some of my teachers in medical school and residency is like, you can't beat a good physical exam. So you listen to somebody's heart and lungs. That's going to tell you a whole lot more than just ordering an X-ray and CAT scan. A lot of times, if you do those things, you don't necessarily need to do those diagnostic studies. And to be honest, I think a lot of times, as physicians, especially here in the United States, we do those because of litigation. So we're worried about like, oh, what if I miss this? This person had a pulmonary embolism. Oh, he had a heart attack, or he had like a pleural effusion. Oh my gosh, I missed that. But that's why we kind of order all these scans. But if you really do listen to the patient, do a good thorough physical exam, you can pretty much figure out a lot of stuff that's going wrong with them and treat them. So.
Awesome. So you have supervised medical students. And
I have, yes.
We may have some medical students on the line. So
sure.
What are some of the great characteristics, great advice you can give to individuals, like for med students? Like, what are some of the characteristics you've seen in like your stellar med students versus those that weren't so great?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So the best attribute I would say would be, the best couple attributes would be come prepared, and then come with willingness to learn. Those are the two main things. They don't necessarily need to know everything that's in all the anatomy and netters. They don't need to know all the pathology and Robbins. You don't need to know all that. You just need to have those two things, in terms of that willingness to learn and being prepared. I've noticed in the medical students that I supervise, I was a preceptor for I think 2 or 3 years when I was working at Bon Secours, and that's what I noticed in all my great medical students. They came prepared. They're willing to learn. When I teach them things, they kind of suck like sponges, really absorb the stuff. And that actually encouraged me to kind of want to teach them more. And we would actually do one thing. One of my attendings, Dr. Barrero, he's a pulmonologist out in Youngstown, Ohio. One thing he would do, he'd always, even after we do rounds, in the ICU, he'd always take time to sit down and go through questions, review questions or a certain subject matter, go through an article with us. And that's one thing I try to do when I was precepting students at Bon Secours. Actually, I'd give them an article. We talk about it at least once a week, whether it be on heart failure, typical primary care stuff, heart failure, hypertension, diabetes, thyroid disorders. Like I have them review the article. We talk about it, say, okay, even go through some questions too. And that also, I think that helped the medical students, and it helped me too, because I had to review it myself, because I'm like, oh, I can't remember some of these things. Let me go ahead and make sure I read. I don't want to look stupid in front of my medical student. So, yeah, so those are definitely the things. Now, in terms of the negatives, I had one student who did not have a stethoscope, and I don't think he had his white coat either.
They weren't ready.
He wasn't ready. And so that just really upset me. I was really like, like I had some problems with that. So, and it almost, when they do that, when medical students do that, it almost seems like they don't care. And you don't want that in a future doctor. You don't want somebody, maybe they're not interested in internal medicine. They're not interested in, my specialty, but at least show that you're willing to learn about it. Because even if you're a trauma surgeon, or if you're a pathologist or a radiologist, you still need to learn some basic, internal medicine, general medicine stuff, in any practice that you do. So it's important for you to learn while you're there, because that's like the best time to learn, supervised. Because I wish I could go back to the days where I had my attending I could fall back on, or, my preceptor I could fall back on, because now you're it. You're the attending, your name is on the chart. So if there's a lawsuit or something like that comes up, they're coming to you. They're not coming to your attending like maybe you did when you're a resident or medical student. So.
And I think it's just important as a learner to have an open mind. You may surprise yourself, like you go into surgery saying, no, I don't want anything to do with surgery. You end up loving it because you took the approach, as you said, of wanting to learn or just showing interest. So, and I feel like internal medicine is one of those specialties where the world is your oyster. There's so many different directions you can go with internal medicine, and you've done just that, You were
Yeah.
focused on men's health at one point. You did
Right.
some laboratory stuff.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And now you're at the VA.
Yes.
So let me ask you this. Walk us through that decision between staying in hospitalist, like becoming a hospitalist versus doing outpatient medicine.
Good question, Dr. Friend. I appreciate you asking that. So basically, even before I went into medicine, or even before I, went to medical school, I always wanted to become a doctor. And initially, I wanted to be a pediatrician, but during medical school rotation, that kind of changed my mind. But that's why I give you all the credit. I give you all the credit, Dr. Fran, because you take care of patients that can't really, say anything. So I give you all the credit. So yeah. So what I ended up doing was that I'm losing my train of thought here.
Hospitalist versus
So
outpatient.
hospitalist, yeah, sorry about that. So with the hospitalist route, I wasn't really interested in just seeing patients one day and then sending them on their way. I wanted to have a stable of patients I could see normally. And there was actually another Ghanaian doctor when I was in Cleveland, the Cleveland area. His name was Dr. Emmanuel Tufo. I think he's retired now. He's probably retired now, but he was a primary care doctor. And he would take care, of course, he was in East Cleveland, which is, if anybody knows anything about Northeast Ohio, it's kind of, East Cleveland's kind of lower income area of the city. And so a lot of his patients were, lower income and stuff like that, but he still took the time to take care of them and everything like that. He was there for a long time. He was there, I think, for 30 or 40 years. He retired probably in maybe the early to mid 2000s, I want to say. But yeah, he was a great example for me, especially being a Ghanaian doctor. I mean, he was a great example for me that, okay, I could do this too. And the fact that he was seeing patients, he has own stable of patients versus, going to the hospital and just doing a hospitalist thing. So that kind of was my motivation, is to go more into primary care versus hospice. Don't get me wrong, hospice is very fun. All the stuff I did in residency, sometimes I do miss that. Going to do procedures, getting to, deal with codes, dealing with other stuff like that. And the fact that you get that immediate gratification of like, okay, they can't find a line on this patient. Let me put a central line in. Or, we need an art line. Doc, can you put that in? Like that immediate gratification of, okay, I did something, I do miss that from time to time. But I also appreciate the fact that I have patients that I can see, every 3-6 months annually, that I can come back and say, hey, Mr. Jones, Mrs. Thompson, so on and so forth. How are you doing? And they appreciate what I do for them too. So
yeah. So it sounds like being able to build rapport and build relationships with your patients was something that was very important to you and helped you make that decision to the other side.
Yes. Yes.
Very cool. So I don't want to hog up all the time. Please, anybody in all the attendees, if you have questions, please feel free to put it in the Q&A and I will ask it for you. No question is a dumb question. This is your opportunity to ask a question from a full-fledged doc that's doing amazing things. While we're waiting for questions to come, tell me how you made the decision to go to the VA.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting story. So it was one of those things that just worked out for the best in terms of God's, I'm sure your parents tell you, oh, God's timing is the best. So it just kind of worked out well. So so I was actually supposed to go to another job. I was supposed to go to a job in North Carolina that was also outpatient, internal medicine, primary care. But unfortunately, that job was rescinded. It was during the pandemic, so that job was actually rescinded. Yeah, so it was crazy. So so I was kind of like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Because we had been planning, my wife and I had been planning to we were actually looking at places to move to and everything like that. And so we're like, oh my gosh, what do we do next? So during that process, we're applied to the VA, and then got in contact with the director of primary care there, and eventually, got interviewed, and thankfully was able to start working there, later on that year. So it was tough initially because of that position. And I'm sure people know this because at the height of the pandemic, a lot of doctors were either fired, doctors were losing their jobs, nurses were losing their jobs, which didn't make sense to me. But that was, quitting. Exactly. People were quitting. Yeah. Because it was too much stress, during at the height of the pandemic. So yeah, but it turned out for the best. So initially I was planning on going somewhere else, but thankfully I was able to get in with the VA. Definitely enjoy my time there. The veterans are great. And working at HRSA when I did my fellowship after graduate school, that was actually, so I was kind of used to government work, even though I technically wasn't an employee at HRSA. I was kind of used to government work. So I kind of had that experience of working in the government prior to coming to the VA. So.
Very cool. Very cool. So we have a question in the chat. It says, did you know coming into medical school that you wanted to go into internal medicine? And how did you choose your specialty? I know you said you kind of was skirting around, maybe thinking about pediatrics. So tell us about internal medicine.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Fred. Appreciate it. So I did initially think I wanted going to peds, and the reason why is because when I was about 2 weeks old, I had volvulus of the small intestine. So basically had a malrotation in there. So they had to open me up, and then they untangled my small intestines. And so, I of course had a big scar as a result of that. Had basically, as long as I can remember, I've had the scar on my stomach from that surgery. So when I found out where it came from, talked to my mom, she told me, okay, it was, the surgeons who had done it. I was like, oh, wow, I kind of want to do that. But at the same time, I wasn't necessarily someone who was interested in surgery per se, but I did want to help take care of kids. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'll do peds. So as the whole time I was thinking about peds. And then when I did my rotation, it wasn't bad. The peds rotation wasn't bad. See,
A lot of kids.
All love to pediatricians. I really do. Honestly, I give all credit to all the pediatricians, all you guys, because you guys do hard work and have the smallest patients, but the most precious patients too. And we appreciate definitely what you all do. So, but during that time, what I noticed that was like I tended to do better, and I actually really enjoyed the internal medicine rotations compared to peds. So I ended up switching more to the internal medicine side. And then I know that wasn't part of Christian's question, but I did also debate: do I want to go into subspecialty, or do I want to just stick with just sticking with internal medicine? And I didn't really have a passion for any one subspecialty. Like some people are like, oh, I want to go into GI, or I want to go into cardiology, or I want to go into critical care. I didn't really have a passion for one in particular, even though all those rotations were great. I enjoyed them. I didn't really have that passion. So that's why I stuck with just being a general internist. So.
Okay, so you want to be a jack of all trades?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Nothing wrong with that.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
So the next question we have says, any advice for SGU students looking to match in the DMV area? Do you know what SGU is? I do not.
I don't know.
St. George's University, maybe?
Oh, maybe. Okay. Yes. St. George. Okay, yeah, she does. Yes, St. George. So I would try and get in contact with a program director in terms of like what they're offering, because I know it can be hard for a lot of foreign medical graduates to get in. I'll use my family as an example. So I have in my extended family, I have physicians. So I have my cousin. Actually, I have another cousin of mine. He's also obviously all my relatives are Ghanaian. So so he actually was a foreign medical graduate. He actually, I think he went to St. George's or another one of the Caribbean schools. And so he ended up, he wasn't able to match in right away. So he worked in a pharmacy, did some other things, kind of try to keep his clinical skills up. I did connect him with my old program director in Ohio. And so he basically linked up with her. She really liked him. She definitely, and so it's like when it came time for him to match and everything like that, of course, he chose them, they chose him, and then they linked up. So yeah, I would say reach out to any of the program directors at the programs you might be interested in, just to build rapport with them, get to know them, see what they feel like a good candidate would be. Any ways maybe you can improve your application. Ask them those types of questions. But yeah, we had a lot of foreign medical graduates at my sister hospital in Ohio. So I went to where I did residency, it was a Catholic health system, but also what we had two sister hospitals. We had one that was our hospital, which was a small hospital, and then we had another hospital, St. Elizabeth in Youngstown, which was bigger, and they typically would have foreign medical graduates. And so pretty much all their residents were foreign medical graduates. So I think with them, obviously they took a USMLEs or COMLEX and everything like that. But yeah, just getting into contact with any medical program director, trying to find out who they are, I would recommend doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to piggyback on that, because I've worked with a few former medical grads and trying to help them get into medical school, into residencies as well. Know which schools actually favor foreign medical grads, right? Not every, and that's not to say you shouldn't apply to schools that don't necessarily cater to foreign medical grads. I definitely have had some individuals that I've mentored who have gotten into schools like Howard University. It really depends on the full package, and whatever you can do to build that package, including as you've done and I've done, getting an additional degree in that time where you're waiting, doing observerships, just putting yourself out there for people to be able to speak on your behalf on how great you are. Because it doesn't matter where you were trained. Like if you're great, you're great. And you just need to get into the right space where somebody can see that and vouch for you. So it's not a hit to who you are and what your training is. It's just a matter of needing somebody to vouch for you, to say that, oh yeah, this person is awesome. They would do great in your residency program. So a great opportunity to do that is to come to the GPSF conference and meet all the great doctors there that are willing and able to help you through this process. So that would be my recommendation.
Definitely, I agree with that.
Let's see the next question. What advice would you give for young physicians starting out?
Okay, yes, I would say in terms of a young physician, so for someone who's maybe going from transitioning from medical school to residency, I would say basically you want to make sure that you're show up early for your rotations even as a resident, try and show up as early as possible. Definitely show, let's say if you're doing an inpatient rotation, let's say you're doing ICU, you want to make sure you get there early. Obviously, a lot of times people will pre-round before they go in round with the large group of the attending. So make sure that you know your stuff when it comes to your patient, especially in ICU. If you might have one or two patients you're assigned to, make sure you know all their eyes and nose, their labs, results, all that good stuff. So
how about on the attending side, like a physician that's starting out, it's a brand new attending, trying to navigate the system and trying to, trying to make that transition from being a learner to being the one that's teaching others.
Exactly. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna grab some water real quick.
Sure.
Be right back.
While we're waiting for him to come back, please feel free to continue to put your questions in the chat and I will continue to ask them. Yes, I would say one of the best things you can do is come to the conference, network with the attendings that will be there. Many of them have gone through that same journey that you are trying to embark on. So getting advice from there. We're hoping, as we've done in years past, to have sessions specifically for the young professionals to ask more questions and for us to be able to just mentor and pour into you and help you on your journey. So make sure you come to the GPSF conference. It's in DC this year. It's April, I think 21st to the 23rd. It's on the platform, so you absolutely see it over and over again. If you have any issues registering, please reach out to one of us and we'll be happy to help you. So back to you, sir.
All right, thank you so much. So on the attending side, I would say make sure you have your money right. And I'm sure Dr. Nee probably talked about this too.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned it. This is a book I wanted to show. It's Power Moves by Dr. Bonnie Simpson Mason. She's actually an orthopedic surgeon who, unfortunately, her career was shortened because she had rheumatoid arthritis and she couldn't practice anymore. So she ended up pivoting and doing more educational stuff for interns and residents in terms of making sure that they had their contracts right, in terms of negotiating because it's all about negotiation, especially if you're working in the private sector. Government sector is different. I had a different experience, you know, when I transitioned to the VA. But her book is great. Her name is, yeah, Dr. Bonnie Simpson Mason. I'll type in, let me see if I can type in the chat here. But yeah, she's great. So definitely what you want to do is make sure you look at your contract when you're looking for a job, and make sure you look at multiple places for work. Don't just say, oh, okay, they're gonna they're offering me this great, you know, 300,000, 400,000 a year salary, but you have to look at the fine details. So basically, a lot of times you'll have situations where you're coming out of residency, they offer you this nice lucrative contract. It's like, oh, we're going to offer you, you know, X amount of dollars, but they say, okay, as a result, you have a non-compete. That basically means you cannot work outside of this
geographic area
distance. Yeah, this jurisdiction. So like, you can't work with, if you leave us early, you can't work with, you know, within 26 miles of a hospital. And the problem is, let's say if you work at a large hospital system, here the hospital system is called Centera. That's a big hospital system. They can say you can't work at any of our locations, so that can move you outside of the city, maybe into another state, you know, if they have that type of non-compete put in there. And then also too, you want to see in terms of, let's say you decide not to leave, you decide to leave the job early. You'd say, okay, I'm tired of this job. You have to see how much time in advance you have to give them, because they can penalize you for that, for terminating your contract early. There can be financial penalties, legal penalties too, if you terminate your contract early. So you want to definitely check that out too. Also, you want to look at in terms of how you're going to be paid. A lot of times, especially in the private sector, thankfully in the government, it's not like this, but there's something called revenue value units that you get paid based upon. So basically, if you don't hit a certain RVUs, you don't get paid as much. You basically might start losing money. You might start off on a guaranteed salary of like, oh, we're going to start you off at 150,000, 200,000, whatever. But then that's for 1 or 2 years after, you know, of your contract. And after that, you're on RVUs. So let's say you don't hit the metric to hit your salary, you end up losing money. So even though you might have been starting off up here, you're coming down here because you're not hitting your RVU. So it's more pressure to see more and more patients, to do more and more, you know, procedures if you're, you know, a specialist. So you definitely want to check that out. Make sure the way your payment structure is something that you agree with, because if it's not, then don't sign the contract. Because there's a lot of times, especially us as young doctors coming out of residency, they want to play us for a fool. You know, they want to throw whatever contract that you can. And it's something I had to learn myself too, throughout the different jobs I've applied for. So you have to make sure you read the contract. And I also would encourage you not only to try read Dr. Bonnie Simpson Mason's book, but also even try and get a contract lawyer, specifically someone who can read physician contracts. You don't want just anybody who does any type of like contract law. You want somebody specifically who does that as well. And also too, there's a good resource in terms of finances called the White Coat Investor. I'm sure you probably have heard of that. And I'll type that in there too. It's a website and you can sign up for their newsletter. And basically it's a good resource for the financial part of being a physician. So he breaks down like, okay, living like a resident after graduating from residency, making sure you decrease your debt and increase your income, making sure you max out your 401k, things of that nature. So that's also another good resource that I definitely advise people, especially after they're out of residency and into attendinghood. And then also trying not to overdo it with the lifestyle creep. So like, you know, you probably know this too, Dr. Fran, when you're a resident, you're making maybe 40,000, 50,000. I don't know how much it is now. When I was a resident, it was like low 40s.
Right.
Yeah. So, but you're doing the work of an attending, basically. I mean, they're billing Medicare and Medicaid thousands of dollars, you know, and so you might have, you know, as a resident, you're probably making like $1 million some dollars during the course of your career at a hospital system, but you're only seeing a portion of that. So So you got to make sure that you have all that stuff straightened out. So, but yeah, with the lifestyle creep, you want to make sure even though you're making 150, 200, 300, whatever, you're not buying a big car or buying a house. Like I would even tell people, not to necessarily run and buy a house right afterward. I say maybe live an apartment just for a brief period of time while you're trying to save money and everything like that, have a good foundation, and then go buy that house, then go get the car. But just out of residency, I wouldn't do that, because a lot of times that's what they try and kind of promote that, I think, to a lot of young doctors, like, oh, now that you're making attending money, you can, buy this type of house, you can buy this type of car, you can buy this. Yeah, you can, but is that financially wise? You have to think about that. So, but yeah, those are some of my little tidbits for someone who's transitioning from residency to attendinghood.
That was great. Very useful and helpful information. And thank you for those book recommendations. So Power Moves by Dr. Bonnie Simpson Powers.
Amazing. Yeah.
The White Coat Investor website is another resource. Thank you for sharing those.
Of course, yeah.
Next question we have for you says, did you do any rotations outside Ohio during fourth year? If so, tips in succeeding in a new medical site? That's a great question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I see that there. Thank you so much, Christian, for asking that question. So I did a rotation at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, my second year of residency, and then also in terms of medical school, I did a rotation at Children's National. Actually, that's kind of when I was kind of deciding what I wanted to do. So I did actually do a rotation at Children's National, I think my third or fourth year of our rotation outside of Ohio. And that was actually, both experiences were good. Both my experience during the rotation as a resident, also as a medical student. At Children's National, I was actually with a sports medicine peds doctor. And that was pretty fun too. That rotation, I think, was like, it was about a month. And the rotation I did as a resident with NIH, that was really good too. So I worked on the allergy side of the NIH, and I worked with a resident. She was a fellow. I'm sorry, she was a fellow. She wasn't just a resident. And that was a good rotation too. And it's rare though, because at my residency, they usually wouldn't allow people to do rotations outside of the state. But thankfully, my program director was lenient enough to let me do that. And so that was a great experience. I was able to meet a lot of researchers there, make some connections there. I actually met Dr. Fauci briefly when I was a resident. He meets so many people, he probably doesn't remember me. So they were I think it was the inpatient they were doing rounds, and I think Fauci was actually coming on to lead rounds, and he was like, "Oh, hey, Tony Fauci," very, very non-assuming guy, like, "Hey, how are you?" And I was like, at the time, I didn't really think about it, but then I was like, "Oh, this is a guy who edits Harrison's," So this guy's kind of a big deal, So, but yeah, I did get the chance to meet him when I did that rotation too, even though it was very brief. So that was pretty cool.
That's your claim to fame, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Awesome. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
The next question we have says, are you able to mentor IMGs who are outside the US but want to come to the US to practice?
Yeah, I'm open to that too. Because like I mentioned, my cousin was, an international medical graduate. And so I'm definitely open to it. And, you can email me if you have any questions. Yeah, I'm definitely open to it, because I know it's not easy coming from overseas to practice medicine here in the United States. They put a lot of hurdles in front of you, especially if you've done training in Ghana or the UK or Germany or somewhere else, and you're trying to practice here. They do make it a little bit more challenging, I think, than they should to transition to practicing here. So, but yeah, I'm open to it.
Very cool. What's your email address?
So my Yahoo address is pbobeng@yahoo.com. And then actually I can type in the chat too.
Oh, I got the Yahoo one. Are you gonna put the other one?
Yeah, I put my Gmail account too.
Did I get that right? pbobeng@yahoo.com.
Yes, pbobeng@yahoo.com. Yep.
Good, good, good.
My Gmail, I'll just put that in there too. I'm actually gonna use that. Yep. So yeah, so definitely you can email me, reach out to me. And that's not a problem at all. And I'll be more than happy to just give you my advice. I don't know everything, but I can tell you what I know.
Awesome. Thank you for offering that.
Course, yeah.
Mentoring is one of the most important things. I think once you get over the hurdle that you're trying to, that your mentor helps you, you have to reach back and also mentor others. So thank you for making yourself available.
Of course, yeah. You got to help each other out, especially I think as Ghanaian physicians, and because I know how it is, you know, because I think we're in a unique situation because of our cultural background and our heritage too. And it's good to kind of have someone who has a similar background in terms of navigating the process and kind of knowing different things, how people operate here in the US versus Ghana and so forth. So
absolutely. And as you're talking, it's reminding me of our time with GPSF. Remember we had a mentoring program way back when?
Yes, I do remember that. We sure did. Yes.
We had our seasoned professionals mentoring our young professionals.
Yes, I
Maybe
do.
we can bring that back.
Exactly. That's right. Hope and pray so, yes. Yeah.
So this might be our last question. I know, okay, we have time for one more after this one. So please put your question in the chat if you haven't already. So this next question is, how do you maintain, this is a great question. How do you maintain a good work-life balance? You said you have a family, you're working, you're enjoying what you're doing. How do you balance all of that? Tell her to come say hi.
Who?
Is that you?
Oh, Eunice? Yeah. No, she's busy doing something.
Oh man, I want to see her face.
That's hi though. Yeah.
Tell her friends said hi.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, you says hi. Yeah. But yes, it can be a challenge. I won't lie, because we just my wife and I had a baby at the end of 2021. Thank you so much, friend. I appreciate it. Yeah, so it has been a challenge having a little one and then also having a job and having a family and everything like that. But I think the main thing in terms of getting a good work-life balance is and I'm still working on this too, is putting up boundaries, right? Trying not to let work bleed over into personal life. And that can be a challenge. Even to this day, it's still a challenge for me. I try not to, when I can, not bring my computer home to chart, you know, because and I'm sure you can you agree with that too. A lot of times it can happen where you're busy seeing patients, but then you still have to chart at the end of the day. So I try and do as much charting, pretty much all my charting at work. And so even though I might leave a few minutes after my end time, you know, at least I've done my charting and I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to bring it home. Sometimes I do have to bring it home, I won't lie, but I try and minimize that as much as possible, because you do need to have time just to spend with your family, with your wife or husband, your children, your extended family, cousins, uncles, aunts, grandparents. So just putting up boundaries. And then, you know, sometimes it can be hard, especially if you're a younger doctor or even a resident, because there's so many, I think there's almost a culture where they feel like, you know, you're a resident, so they can kind of have you do whatever you want. But at the same time, you are a person too. You know, you shouldn't be working, you know, not really 90 hours a week. That's crazy. You should be working 89 hours a week. That's kind of stuff that they used to do back in the day. Even when I was a resident, they didn't have I think they had the work hours restrictions, I think maybe after my intern or second year or something like that. But yeah, like, no, you definitely need to have boundaries. Make sure you take time for yourself. If you enjoy things like going to the movies, hanging out with family, do that. I even do some writing too, on the side as well. So that's kind of an outlet for me outside of medicine. So.
What type of writing? Tell us more.
Okay. Oh, thank you. So basically, I do write science fiction stuff. I actually have 2 books, matter of fact, out on Amazon and Google Play. So basically the main conceit is it's like a science fiction / political thriller series. So I have 2 books out now. So that's kind of like my outlet as well, is that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Tell us the titles. We need to support you.
Sure. I appreciate that. All right. So the first book is called Vigil, and
Beautiful.
I'll write that in there. Yeah. So that was the first book. And again, I just go by my first 2 initials and then my last name. And second book in that series is Sovereign. And that's this one right here. Yeah, the artist actually, he's African-American artist from Pennsylvania, who did the cover art for the character art, stuff like that too. So those are two books. And I do that, you know, it wasn't easy writing a book and working as an internal medicine doc. But I was able to do it, thankfully. So yeah, so those are two books I have, and I'm working on making it a whole series. So so that's kind of like my outlet outside of medicine. So
I am thoroughly impressed.
thank you.
That is so awesome. It's so important to have an outlet and something you really enjoy, but you're a published author.
Yes, thank you.
I
Yep,
learned something new about you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Very proud.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
I don't see any additional questions in the Q&A, so I'll ask you to end us off. If you can just share some encouraging words for our young professionals that are trying to be where you are in a very well-balanced life, writing books, having babies, all of that fun stuff, enjoying the work that you do.
Yes, and I'm going to put the author website in there too, the URL. But of course, yeah. So words of advice, definitely, I appreciate you all coming into this webinar. And Dr. Fran, thank you so much for inviting me too. I really appreciate that. It's an honor. I would just say, make sure that you, as a physician, that you're doing it for the right reasons. Make sure that even though things can be discouraging, because it can be with medicine, you lose patients, you're dealing with administration, you're dealing with paperwork, you're dealing with so many challenges, but make sure that you have the love of medicine and the drive to do what's best for both you and the patient. So as long as you do that, you'll always end up being on top. And also too, when it comes to the practical things in terms of the financial aspect, make sure again you read your contract thoroughly front to back. When you come in from residency to being an attending, because as a resident, you have no choice. You basically are a draftee, like an NBA draft, where it's like, okay, that's the best way I can compare it to. It's like the NBA draft. It's like, okay, I got drafted into Cleveland Clinic. I got drafted into University of Southern Florida, and you have no say. It's like, okay, this is a resident contract, sign it. You have no choice. But as an attending, you do have the choice. You can say, okay, I don't want to go here, or I don't like this clause in my contract. So make sure you read the contract and you have someone read that contract thoroughly, and then also maybe even consider that book from Dr. Bonnie Simpson Mason in terms of reviewing contracts. And also to the lifestyle creep, try as best as you can to try and live as conservatively as you can out of residency, because I'm not sure about a lot of other people, but I have a lot of debt, and I'm almost done paying it off. I'm getting close to paying it off. But you want to make sure that you pay off the debt if you do have student loan debt as best you can before you start, buying the large ticket items. So those are basically my main take homes for the audience. So
awesome. Again, thank you so very much. It was an absolute pleasure having you and learning new things about you.
Thank you, Dr.
Amazing time. Thank you. And we hope to see you at the conference.
Yes, definitely. Yes. I know it's been a while. Yes, we will definitely work on getting there, because it has been a minute. So
awesome. Thank you again, and have a good night. We want to thank the audience members for the beautiful questions that you asked. They were great. It really helped us engage in great conversation. I hope you all learned a lot, and we look forward to seeing you next month with our next guest.
All right. Thank you.